Spider-Man Homecoming is finally coming out this week, and I am excited. I know a lot of people are actually a little weary about this movie. I mean, it is yet another Spider-Man reboot, but this feels different to me. It looks much more upbeat than any of the previous Spider-Man films. It's got a great lead who has the potential to be the best live-action Spider-Man to date, and plus, Michael Keaton is the Vulture. Most importantly, it's set within the Marvel Cinematic Universe where Spider-Man belongs. It's been a long and hard road to get here, what with Sony spending years trying to get their own movies off the ground. The story of Spider-Man on screen is also the story of Spider-Man trying to get on screen. So today I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at some Spider-Man movies that didn't get made, ones that were just about to go into production before Marvel came along and said, hey, stop it. Real quick before we get started, I do want to touch upon the Spider-Man movie that James Cameron was slated to make in the early 90s with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Octopus. It's been discussed a lot on the internet already. Crack did a great video on it, which you can see here. I just wanted to mention it because I know if I didn't, people in the comments would. And I wanted to remind people that this was a movie that featured Peter Parker and Mary Jane having sex on the Brooklyn Bridge. Google it. But really today, I wanted to talk about the Spider-Man movies Sony tried to make after Spider-Man had already become a known cinematic quantity. Starting, of course, with the mythical Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man 4. The original plan for this movie was to have Tobey Maguire come back as Spider-Man and to have him go up against the Vulture, who would have been played by John Malkovich. Vulture would have been the main villain, but there would have been references and cameos by others. Dylan Baker, who had played Dr. Kirk Connors in Spider-Man 2 and 3, would have finally started to turn into the Lizard. Mysterio would have had a cameo, and he would have been played by Bruce Campbell, because of course, who else was going to play Mysterio in a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie? Anne Hathaway was slated to play the Black Cat, which she technically did play, just in a completely different movie and under a completely different name. Now, the actual plot details of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4 aren't as well documented as who the villains were intended to be. The only real plot details that we know is that Raimi was going to build towards the Sinister Six over the course of 2 or 3 films, and that Anne Hathaway's Black Cat was going to take over for the Vulture and become the Vultress. But this movie didn't happen. Sony decided to say goodbye to Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire and just reboot the whole damn thing. There are a lot of theories as to why Spider-Man 4 was ultimately canceled, the biggest being that Sony balked at Sam Raimi's proposed budget for the movie. It would have been well north of $300 million, which is more than what Spider-Man 3 cost. Instead, Sony decided to go right into production on Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man movie, which, you know what? It's okay. It's got its problems, but overall, it's not a bad movie. I kind of enjoy it. Amazing Spider-Man 2, though? Yeah, no, that movie's a mess. Straight up a mess. But it's pretty well known that Sony intended to make a million sequels to these movies. In fact, they had already had plans for Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4 months before Amazing Spider-Man 2 was even released. Much like Sam Raimi, Sony also wanted to get the Sinister Six on the big screen, but do it at a much quicker pace. That's why at the end of Spider-Man 2, there was that big reference to Sinister Six, which is basically them loudly saying, hey, this is our plan. Instead of building to it over the course of a few movies, they were just going to rush to it as quickly as possible because you gotta get that shared universe going. But perhaps the craziest idea that Sony had, the one that they kept toying with, was cloning Gwen Stacy. Despite all the negatives of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, one of the most commonly cited high points was the casting of Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and the top brass at Sony knew this. They knew she'd have to die at some point. I mean, that's just what Gwen Stacy does, but they were so desperate to keep Emma Stone around that they were willing to use elements of the Clone Saga to do it. So just imagine for a minute, sit back, close your eyes, and imagine a Spider-Man Clone Saga movie made by people who are having a hard time making one good Spider-Man movie on their own. In fact, a lot of people, myself included, believe that the only reason we have Spider-Gwen is to keep Emma Stone around, to give her something to do in future movies other than be the girlfriend. This, of course, would have led to her own solo spin-off movie, because in Sony's Marvel Cinematic Universe, everybody gets a spin-off movie. Venom and Carnage, the Sinister Six, Aunt May. Kind of like being Oprah. You get a spin-off movie. You get a spin-off movie. Spin-off movies for everybody. But between the poor critical reception and box office returns of Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Sony email fiasco, and a lot of other factors, ultimately Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4 were canceled. But this was ultimately a good thing because in turn it led to Marvel coming in and getting access to Spider-Man to put into Captain America Civil War, and the rest they say is history. Now Spider-Man is firmly planted in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is honestly where he belongs. He needs to interact with other Marvel characters for a variety of reasons. For one thing, sooner or later, people would be asking, hey, how come Spider-Man isn't talking to Captain America or Iron Man like he does in the comics? Second, it gives that unique Spider-Man perspective of the greater world at large that the comics have and a lot of the shows have that the movies never did. And judging from the trailers of Homecoming, it looks like we're getting exactly that. And all is right with the world now. Although Sony is still trying to make spin-off movies like Venom and Silver and Black, so I guess not all is right with the world, but it's starting to get right. What do you guys think about these canceled Spider-Man movies? Do any of these sound like a good idea to you? Would you want to have seen any of them? Or are you happy with what you got now with Marvel taking the reins back and putting out Homecoming? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. There are, of course, new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. Make sure you subscribe to this channel to catch all of that. Like this video, share it with a friend, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time.